Catus Maximus here. This time I'm reviewing the two common Milwaukee 1/4-inch hex right angle drivers. I do have a DeWalt, but I'm not going to make this a comparison video. I'm going to do a whole video on that DeWalt because it's a bit funky. Many manufacturers such as Makita and DeWalt make smaller, compact, right angle 1/4-inch hex drivers. I just happen to have the two Milwaukees and this weird snake handle DeWalt one, which has not, it's been okay, but it has not been the most reliable. These Milwaukees have ended up working out better for me, and there is a ton of reviews. This larger one is a much newer style. This smaller one is one that they had for a while, although you can still get both online, and this one's significantly more expensive, about $50 or so. I mean, it trends. I've seen them, pretty low as 30, and some places trying to get 60 for these, where these things tend to be around the $20 or $30 range. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the original or first generation one of these Milwaukees. These had a huge amount of criticism for a variety of valid reasons. I still have it because I like how tiny it is, although it can be difficult to use. Now, many times people will use these with impact drivers, and these kind of right angle heads just have too small of gears. There are right angle impact drivers, and they're real specially designed for it. I've also found many of these right angle heads, such as this DeWalt, which are rated for impacts, really just can't take the load of modern impact drivers. It's kind of weird that some manufacturers say they're rated for it. Milwaukee never advertised this to be rated for impacts, but a lot of people use them with cordless drills running spade bits, which is a valid use when you're trying to make a hole in a tight space, and having issues with the gears blowing out. Part of the problem with this one is it doesn't have any ball bearings in it, and due to the it's really loosely fitting. The gears are really pretty coarse, and you can hear you can hear it. I can feel it. Another aspect of these is the fact that the support on the front end is just a metal collar, so when you get a bit in there and there's torsion on one side or the other, there starts being a whole lot of friction in this, and it can become very difficult to turn. Sometimes you're turning it and you're thinking, God, is it a bit jammed or what's going on here? And it's just because you have too much side load. And so that was one frustrating aspect of these, although it does have a nice magnetic bit retention. The other major criticism was the whole system they used to keep this under control. Obviously, when you're using one of these, you have to keep control of this front head part in order to prevent it from wanting to basically twist around like that, rotate out of the fastener. So they have this little handle, and it just has a couple little catches at the bottom. And the issue with this is because it doesn't fit very tight, so it doesn't stay on very well. You're trying to use this in a particular situation to get a nice grip, and you're pulling and it's slipping around. And you think, well, maybe I'll just hold it with my hand. Unfortunately, the way they set this up, this lower collar spins. And so the only way to control it is literally by holding on to this tiny little head, and that has created issues for people. That and the general play that's in there, how much this wants to wobble around. It was kind of a cheesy unit, and more of a disappointment from Milwaukee that they would create such a kind of a cheesy little tool given their name. Although I will admit that when they came out with these, there weren't many options available. Well, because of all those criticisms, Milwaukee actually responded, which is kind of interesting. This wouldn't be the first time that Milwaukee, we would call so-called over-respond. When they made electric corded impact wrenches back in the 70s and 80s, they were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. Let me go ahead and zoom out. And people just hated them. They had terrible power. They were not very reliable. They got a ton of criticism. And they remade them. The modern ones that they have now, and then just the immediate generation previous, we'll say like the 2000s or early 2000s. I believe they're the 6075, 6076 models. With the planetary gearboxes, they completely re-engineered their impact wrenches from the ground up, and they were exponentially better, just like not even comparable to their old wrenches. And now Milwaukee, with their impact wrenches, they went from making some of the worst to some of the best corded electric impact wrenches. It was pretty amazing, and that's exactly what they've done here. Is they've taken what was this, and that was the on all of its criticisms, and they just tossed it and remade one that's just a world of difference away from what the old one was. This one is much heavier duty. It weighs 3 times as much. It's obviously quite a bit larger if we compare it, although it's really not so bad considering how much more robust this unit is. It is not as oversized as you would think. The old one did have a 15-degree angle. This one is a straight right angle, and I do appreciate that a little more. It still has a nice cutout in the front to get a thumb action. But you can see where the logo is just standard Milwaukee there. They actually printed their genuine lightning bolt logo. It has a little hole where you can put some drops of oil in, although it's a good place for dirt to also get in, but I appreciate that they did that. Other big differences is a quick release chuck, much better, with a nice billet aluminum collar. As you can see inside there, there's a large rubber sealed ball bearing, so this spindle is really nice and tight and does not bind up on you when you're putting sideways pressure on it. Another aspect is this tube, or the collar on the backhand, is now solid. It doesn't twist around, so if you're grabbing it and you're using that, you can have additional grip on that surface. The post has much less play and is very smooth, as you can hear. It sounds like a more normal gearbox. The gears aren't smashing into each other and cogging badly. Another thing that I thought was odd is that this is turned at a 1/4 inch, but it also has 5/16, so it seems that they may have been thinking to make this a larger size unit, and then decide just to make it 1/4 inch because they didn't want to have 2 different models. Other aspects is the way the handle holds on is also a quantum leap, literally, over what the old one. This has a little handle. You unscrew it. There's a little threaded rod and this little collar, and you can see it has teeth that match into there. So whatever position you want the handle in, which is a feature this one didn't even offer, is that you can have this handle at different positions. You'll lock it down and it is held on very securely with those solid teeth. Now this can also rotate, but what's interesting is it's locking. And you know, how does it rotate? Well, what we can see is if we push the handle all the way forward, then we're able to rotate this around, and as soon as we pull the handle back some, it locks up. And how that's done is we can see that's round here, but on the front of that little angle there's this little flat. And how they've done is they have a spring-loaded ball detent. People have been correcting me about that. I will say detent. And it has a very short spring. And so when you're rotating this around and the ball detent is bumping up and down the ridges, that little flat gives them enough space to do so. And as soon as you move the handle back to where that curved part is, I don't know if we can see inside there, it's almost impossible, but you can see the little backside. They have like a little metal plate insert. It just simply takes away the space, so the ball bearing and the very short spring can't retract far enough to allow it to rotate. One thing I will say about it is that they kind of made that flat really too far forward. What I found is sometimes if you loosen the handle just enough to get it to rotate, it won't allow you to go forward far enough, and it feels really rough where it won't rotate, and you just have to really loosen the handle, and then it turns very nicely. And so, of course, it has, 12 positions. There would be 12 positions, and I think that's rather handy. And so you can do something normal like this and try to get some force. Now, the biggest issue with these kinds of drivers is actually getting enough force to reasonably drive a screw. And let me go ahead and demonstrate that now. All right, here we are. One other thing is, I will say again, even if these manufacturers like the DeWalt say that they're rated for impact, I can tell you that this DeWalt here, I haven't tried it because I just didn't want to damage the Milwaukees, but this DeWalt with the snake handle was sold as impact ready, and I just totally blew it out. DeWalt's new DCF 887 is way more powerful than what it can do, and I did want to point that out, but I'll make a dedicated video. We're going to go ahead and actually drive these by hand, or excuse me, not by hand, but non-impact using a drill motor. Let's go ahead and get this tightened up here. And we're going to go ahead and attempt to actually drive a screw just to demonstrate how funky these little tools are and how they kind of help in a pinch, but overall they can be real tough to use. So we don't have, this isn't a significant screw, it's a little 2-inch screw, and you can have threads all the way up the collar. And this is just Douglas fir, and I'm just going to try to drive this wood screw as if it were in a tight situation. And this is going to be kind of funky. Let's see if I can't get a view where you can all see. That's a little better. See, that collar just wants to come off. The 15-degree angle is a little odd because you have to remember to hold it. And you just can't get enough force. I mean, what on earth? There's an oddity. I've never had that happen before. Look, the thread actually peeled away from the screw. I've never seen that before. Let's try a different one here. Maybe we'll have more success in this demonstration. Screws aren't made so consistently. So we'll see if I can even remotely attempt to drive this screw in here. It's just about impossible. To tell you the truth, like this little silver Milwaukee, I mean, there's this... I mean, there's just no way. As soon as you get any torque on it, this head just wants to rotate. There's just no way to hold on to it. And so I understand a bunch of the criticism is just these little things I use it for hand starting screws, sometimes bolts with a 1/4-inch hex adapter, but otherwise it really is useless. So I'm going to go ahead and try the other Milwaukee here. We're using a really nice bit. This is one of those DeWalt bits where they just forge the tips on, so it's one of those dual tip 1-inch bits. What I was going to mention about this Milwaukee is I do like the chuck because it will hold a 1-inch bit nice and tight, as well as a more standard bit. When you put in a more standard bit that has a cutout, then the collar will drop back down. But I thought that they had a genius design there where even though the collar doesn't drop back down, it still will hold a 1-inch bit nice and tight. And that's because they have the ball bearing set in the corner of one of the hexes rather than on the flat side. So this one's a little better. It's a little easier to control. We can move the handle to a little bit more angled position so it's a little more ergonomic. And we'll see how this one works out. It's also a little easier intellectually to use because you just need to be at a right angle to whatever you're driving rather than that odd 15-degree angle. I think it's already blown out the tip from that last one. Let me go ahead and try to get this out of here. We'll get this thing out of here. And we'll try with a new screw. And part of this whole video, now you're kind of understanding, is that these right angle drivers, as good of an idea they are, they're really only in real specific situations. To tell you the truth, I've had better luck using them with spade bits than just about anything else. As far as driving screws with them, you just can't get the kind of forces where you need to have them in order to effectively drive screws. And that's just the point of this. But I just wanted to show that this new one has the way the handle locks up, you have so much more pressure, so much more force that you can really just get your whole darn hand on top of it and actually get it to somewhat cooperate, as we can see. Anyway, I think that was just about it for this Milwaukee right angle driver, 1/4-inch hex driver review. It was probably far longer than it needed to be, but I really wanted to get some detail because I've looked online and man, there are just hundreds and hundreds of reviews of these things. And so just wanted to go ahead and put this video out there. Once again, thank you so much for watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Catus Maximus out.